Mail-in voting means mail-in cheating. Interesting. Public records recently revealed the president himself voted by mail. What? I thought it meant cheating. In a recent special election for State House district that includes Mar-a-Lago. So according to President Trump, vote by mail is cheating when the nurse who's working strict work hours or the elderly person without mobility issues uses it, but totally fine when he himself personally uses it to vote.
He said it himself. Mail-in voting is cheating. Then he mailed in his own vote. That is not a mistake. That is not a misquote. That is the President of the United States applying one rule to you and a different rule to himself. On the record, in public, provably. And while he was doing that, his administration was pushing a law that would force millions of Americans to produce a passport just to vote. Half of Americans don't have one. The Save America Act isn't a cleanup operation. It's a blockade. Durbin just put the receipt on the Senate floor. If you want this tracked every day, hit subscribe, because now watch how Durbin built this case from the start.
Mr. President, let's see if we all agree on something. People should not be allowed to vote in an election illegally. Is that a radical idea? I think it's a basic idea. It ought to be against the law for somebody who is not legal to try to vote in America. It is. It's a felony. Well, how often does this happen, that people who are ineligible to vote, like immigrants, try to actually vote? Well, let's think of this possibility. In a 20-year period of time, we did a survey of all the people who were caught trying to vote illegally in the United States. Now, keep in mind that each election cycle, 25 to 50 million Americans register to vote. So in a 20-year period of time, think about all of the possibilities of people who are registering to vote and how many were actually illegal when tried to register to vote. How many do you think? 7 million, right? No. 700,000? No. 70,000? No. 700? No. In a 20-year period of time, 77 people in America who were ineligible tried to vote. 77 out of millions who are being registered every election cycle. So the Republicans said that's enough. 77's enough. Let's make everybody in America re-register. Everybody. We'll catch those 77 or anybody who looks like one of them. You think to yourself, why are you doing this to me? I've been legally voting in America for decades, and nobody's questioned it, nor should they. And why do I have to go through a registration? Well, that's because we shouldn't have anybody illegal voting. I agree we shouldn't, but with 77 out of millions, okay, you want to re-register to vote? The bill before us says there's a simple process you need to follow. You have to show identification. Well, that's easy. I just got on a flight the other day and I had to show my ID. Everybody shows their ID. But what ID did you show? Your driver's license, right? That's what I use. I've got one of those upgraded driver's licenses we're all supposed to have. That proves my identity. They accept it, put me on an airplane. Nobody says he's really a terrorist. He showed me his driver's license. But their bill doesn't include a driver's license. If you want to prove your identity, you have to show a passport. That's one way to do it. Well, how many people in America have a passport? About half. About half do. And if you don't have a passport and you want to get one just in time for the election, get busy. First thing you need to do is be prepared to write a check for $165 for your passport. And then you go through the process. It may only be 4 weeks, but it may be longer, depending on how much you want to pay. That's one way that you can prove your identity. The other way is pretty simple. Produce your birth certificate. Got one handy? What name does it show on there? For a lot of ladies, it shows their birth name, what their family name was when they were born. They've since gotten married. They may have a hyphenated last name. The names don't match up, so birth certificates don't work out that well. Why are we going through this hassle? 77 people tried to vote who shouldn't have in 20 years. That isn't what it's really about. I used to work for a fellow in politics who used to say, for every political issue, there's a good reason and a real reason. Good reason is to stop fraud in voting. Real reason, turn this election upside down in November. And why do they want to turn it upside down? Because this president thinks he's going to lose. Why would he think he's going to lose? He might have been listening to the Hungarian Rhapsody over the weekend. And if he was, the people of Hungary threw out Viktor Orban and put in this person who's on the left. Despite the campaigning of Vice President Nance and the support of President Trump, the right-wing candidate lost, overwhelmingly lost in Hungary. The fear is the president's party is going to lose in November. The voters have the ultimate decision. The point I'm getting to is there are so many things we could be working on now, but to have Americans re-register to vote with questionable identification sources accepted, with people writing out a $165 check so that they have a passport, so that they can vote in November, this is all unnecessary and overdone. And what we're telling you today is there are more important things for us to worry about in America. First and foremost, let's get these gasoline prices down. Filled your tank recently? $4 a gallon, $5 a gallon? In Illinois, you run into both. It means that families are going to put a lot more money into the tank than they did before because of this president's undeclared war. That's what we're facing. Mr. President, if this chamber continues to debate this misguided Save America Act, we also must reconcile with the president's recently signed executive order. Listen to this. An unlawful, unprecedented attempt to meddle in elections under the banner of integrity. Why? Because it's a blatant attempt by President Trump to exceed his constitutional authority by directing the administration to determine the eligibility of American citizens to vote. This is a reckless solution to a problem that doesn't exist. 77 voters over 20 years. This executive order shouldn't come as a surprise, as I mentioned. The president has long sought to sow distrust in the integrity of our elections. Last month, listen to this. The president wrote, and I'm quoting him now.
Here's what the record shows. 77 people. That's the number of ineligible voters caught trying to register over a 20-year period, out of hundreds of millions of registrations. 77. That is the problem Trump's administration built this entire legislative and executive apparatus to solve. And their solution? Force every American to re-register. Require a passport that half the country doesn't own. Run everyone through a federal database. The same database that already flagged innocent American citizens as non-citizens in Missouri. More than half of them, legitimate voters, flagged wrong. Courts have already blocked Trump's first election executive order. He signed a second one in March 2026 anyway, this time directing the Postal Service to decide who gets a mail ballot. That power doesn't belong to the post office. It doesn't belong to the president. The Constitution gives it to the states and to Congress. And through all of it, every press conference, every social media post calling mail-in voting cheating, Trump was voting by mail himself. That clip is not going to go away. Once the public sees that specific a contradiction, the credibility argument collapses. You cannot run an election integrity campaign and then quietly vote by mail at Mar-a-Lago and expect nobody to notice. Durbin said it on the Senate floor. This is not about the 77, it's about November. It's about making the system harder to navigate for voters who are less likely to vote for this president. The courts keep blocking it. The facts keep contradicting it. And now the Senate floor has the receipts. Subscribe if you want this covered every day, because this fight is not over.